The message came wrapped in arrogance. It burst into Earth's networks at precisely 11:11 UTC, a time chosen. It seemed to mimic human superstition. It arrived simultaneously across every device with a speaker or screen, regardless of power status, encryption, or distance from the nearest signal tower. From the shattered cell phones of refugees in war zones to the titanium-encased terminals in underground military bunkers, the message played, a face, if it could be called, that loomed across every screen, smooth, featureless, metallic. 2 horizontal slits glowed faint violet, pulsing like a heartbeat slowed to a crawl. The creature's mouth was a vertical seam that didn't open. It didn't need to. The voice emerged from inside people's heads, subvocal, direct, and dripping with patronizing disgust. "We address the denizens of primitive Earth," it began. "You are the last unclaimed world of Quadrant 7B. You are of sentimental curiosity only. Your art is noise. Your biology chaotic. Your emotions diseased. And yet, your destruction is inconvenient. So instead, we offer mercy." The voice paused for dramatic effect, though the effect was lost on most humans, who were frozen in shock. "You will surrender all control of global communications, atmospheric, relays, and sonic distribution platforms to the Tavari Overlink network. Your languages will be phased out. Your historical data will be assimilated and corrected. Your cultural artifacts will be archived posthumously, if necessary." The final words weren't delivered with menace. They were delivered like a doctor, explaining a terminal diagnosis, clinical and impersonal. "This is not war. It is reordering, and you are fortunate to be considered." Then came the final insult. The alien leaned closer, and this time the voice was slower, like it was savoring its own superiority. "Your cries, your songs, your stories, they will be amusing footnotes in the archive." The screen blinked out. The world didn't scream. It laughed, not all at once, not in every corner, but pockets of humanity erupted in disbelief, fueled chuckles that swelled into fits of full-on hysterics. In Tokyo, a teen DJ ripped the speech audio, looped the phrase "amusing footnotes," and overlaid it with a synthwave beat. Within an hour, it had gone viral across the dark net. In Lagos, a hip-hop artist known as Black Sun remixed the transmission into a track called "Cries of the Primitive," complete with pulsing bass drops and glitch effects. The track exploded on underground pirate streams, spread by digital graffiti signatures, drone-carried flash drives, and hacked airwaves. By the next morning, alien condescension was trending on every underground comms band. Earth still had access to. The Tavari didn't understand. They thought their message was chilling, unanswerable. They didn't know what humans did with insults. They turned them into anthems. Zora Malik had heard the message in her sleep. The implant behind her ear, the one installed by the failing public health system before the grid collapse, lit up like fireworks the moment the alien transmission arrived. The voice slid into her subconscious like oil through fabric. She bolted upright in her Berlin squat house, gasping for air like she'd been pulled from drowning. She wasn't the only one. Half the city had woken the same way. By morning, people were dragging half-broken soundboards and modular synth rigs into the street. The DJs came first, then the poets, then the dancers. People who had nothing else to cling to anymore gathered in ruined plazas with salvaged gear and set the Tavari's words to rhythm. Zora wasn't famous, not even locally, just another sound engineer scraping together survival gigs, mixing underground pulsecasts for ragged resistance stations. But that morning, something in her clicked. She pulled up the file she'd snagged the moment the Tavari broadcast hit the raw audio signature, layered with alien subfrequencies. No one else seemed to hear, except her. She listened to it. Time she didn't hear arrogance. She heard ... insecurity. Tiny warbles in the frequency. A pattern of hesitation behind the imposed dominance. It wasn't just a threat, it was a performance. In the depths of an abandoned subway station in New York, Darius Quinn, an audio coder turned resistance signal hacker, was reprogramming his gear to decode the layered waveform of the Tavari speech. He wasn't interested in the content, he was interested in the structure. The Tavari used a unique sonic encoding that shimmered across frequencies inaudible to the human ear. But Darius had read ancient CIA debriefs about voice print layering and psychological warfare. If he could isolate the background frequencies, he might expose what the Tavari were hiding behind all that contempt, and he did. Buried under the phrase, "You are of sentimental curiosity," was a second signal faint, fluttering like a skipped heartbeat. It wasn't words, it was music, not human, but unmistakably melodic. Darius uploaded the signature to the underground net. 30 minutes later, Zora found it. She stared at her cracked screen, heartbeat accelerating. She didn't have to analyze it. She felt it. The aliens had a song of their own. The first true counterstrike didn't come from a missile silo or an orbital cannon. It came from a street performance in Snow Paulo. The artist was known only as Ikasulu. No face, no voice. Just a hooded figure who stepped into the street with a beat machine, a looping pedal, and a speaker cart powered by scavenged solar arrays. The track began simple 4 pulses in rhythm, then a twisted sample of the Tavari's own words. Your cries, your songs, your stories. Loop, your cries, your songs, your stories. A drop dot then, Earth answered. Zulu's beat morphed into a war. Chan throat sung echoes layered with Afro-Brazilian percussion, synthetic choirs, and violins scavenged from pre-war conservatories. The lyrics were in no language, just raw syllables, primal, glorious. By the second chorus, the streets were flooded. By the third, a signal echoed off a now-defunct Tavari relay beacon and looped it. The aliens tried to cut the stream. It reappeared on 20. New channels, then 200, then 2000. Earth wasn't fighting. Back it was singing back, and it was contagious. Back, on the Tavari command ship orbiting Europa. High Auditor Turskal stood before the tactical array, mandibles twitching in irritation. The human networks were supposed to be fractured, dismantled, but the signal music was spreading across channels previously considered dead. This is not strategic resistance, said one of his adjutants. They waste energy. No coordination. No fleet movement. They're amateurs, another added. Trskel leaned closer to the display. Earth's atmosphere pulsed with harmonic feedback. No, he said coldly. They are doing something worse. What? They are celebrating. In a digital bunker beneath Marrakesh, a global underground project known only as Counterverse began compiling every instance of the alien transmission into a beat index. Zora was there, so was Darius, and so was a network of underground composers, linguists, philosophers, and sound theorists. Together, they created the first human unity track HUT-01, a 34-minute track that blended tribal drumming, electronica, alien waveform deconstructions, and the Tavari's own insult, but not just played, warped, reversed, transformed. The line "you are" of sentimental curiosity was pitched, looped, and woven into a vocal hook sung by 1,000 voices across every culture, backed by the cries of newborns and the breath of the dying. The message was no longer theirs, it was ours, and it was only the beginning. It started with distortion. At first, the Tavari dismissed it as signal bleed, static from solar interference, background resonance from Earth's chaotic analog networks. But the distortion spread every time their original broadcast was replayed. Something shifted. In Johannesburg, a group of teens had layered the Tavari insult over a traditional Zulu chant. The result wasn't defiance, it was beauty. A deep humming calandra response that wove the aliens' own words into something new. Your cries, your songs, your stories, the Tavari had sneered. The remix repeated the phrase, but this time it sounded like reverence. A benediction. In London, orchestras emerged from the ruins, dragging cracked cellos and rusted flutes. They set up in the bombed remains of Westminster Abbey, looping violin over piano, over pulsing samples of alien feedback. People gathered in silence and wept. No war horn had blown, but Earth was waking up. Zora hadn't slept in 2 days. Her fingers were blistered from rewiring panels. Her ears rang from signal overload. Her mind drifted in and out of flow states that blurred memory with rhythm. But she was close, so close to cracking the second layer of the alien waveform. This wasn't just a speech. It wasn't just a threat. It was a song, not metaphorically. Literally, the Tavari had encoded their demands, using musical mathematics. Frequencies layered in Fibonacci intervals. Vibrational harmonics, structured like chord progressions. It wasn't just language, it was performance. But something didn't add up. The melody beneath the arrogance felt broken. Fractured. It lacked rhythm, emotion, resolution, like someone had stolen the chorus from a song that had once meant something else. She fed the waveform through her pitch shifter and let the computer play back the inverted tones. What came out wasn't noise. It was mourning. The original signal, stripped of distortions, sounded like a funeral dirge, slow, haunting, beautiful in its despair. Zora's hands trembled. The Tavari weren't just mocking humanity. They were trying to bury their own pain. At the same time, in a desert outpost near what used to be Phoenix, Arizona, Darius sat inside a sound-dampening bunker, surrounded by 6 old-school analog speakers. He wasn't decoding anymore. He was composing. Counterverse had upgraded. What started as remixes was now open warfare. Not with weapons, with sound. Darius had created a subroutine called Reverba, recursive sonic engine, that could absorb Tavari broadcasts and flip their signals in real time. Every time the Tavari transmitted, the humans responded instantly with choruses that mocked the original message, harmonies that twisted alien syntax into melody, and distortion that echoed into Tavari ears as pure grief. Reverb wasn't just a program. It was a contagion. Tavari officers started reporting symptoms, disorientation, audio hallucinations, recurring memory loops. Their minds, never evolved for metaphor, were beginning to fracture, and it was about to get worse. On the other side of the planet, in the flooded ruins of Venice, a woman named Layla Noor performed a ballad in a half-submerged opera house. Her only audience were refugees and resistance, fighters clinging to candlelight and half-functional radios. She wore a dress made from solar blankets, a necklace of broken earbud cords. The ballad was called Ashes Beneath the Laugh. It sampled the original Tavari insult, but layered it under human lullabies from every continent, Tibetan throat singing, Sudanese wailing laments, Appalachian bluegrass hums. By the time she reached the final chorus, thousands across Earth were already tuning in. So were the Tavari. They'd tried to jam the signal, but humans didn't need perfect delivery. They needed resonance, and the resonance had begun to hit orbital frequencies in low orbit above Earth. Tavari's signal director Helvix Carr stared at his readings with mechanical stillness. They're infecting the carrier bands, his assistant said in disbelief. How? It's not a virus, not code. It's resonance. Emotion tied to audio. Helvix Carr growled a deep, metallic scraping noise. Shut them down. We tried. Then burn the infrastructure. They're not using infrastructure, the assistant said, horror dawning. They're using people. Helvix Carr froze. Humans had become their own transmitters, singing in caves, chanting in basements, whispering stories in code through old telephone wires. They weren't resisting the invasion, they were redefining it. Zora finally cracked the full, harmonic profile on day 7. The Tavari signal was a corrupted song 1. repurposed by an emotionally sterile race to mask their own collapse. The original composition came from an extinct Tavari subcaste, a culture that had once used music to grieve, to remember, to celebrate. It had been purged by the same overlords who now threatened Earth. Zora's heart raced. "This isn't a weapon," she whispered. "It's a eulogy. They used it to erase what they used to be." She uploaded the deconstruction to Claverse. Within hours, remixers and coders all over Earth took the fragments and reassembled them, not to hurt the Ethavari, but to remind them. The next global track was called Echoes of the Unheard. It combined the recovered Tavari melody with human grief. Voicemails left for loved ones who never made it. Recordings of final messages, prayers, screams. Then, harmonies. Children's choirs layered over seismic rumbles, bagpipes in minor key, fused with Brazilian BORIM. Street musicians from Nairobi to Oakland, stitched into the flow. The final track was 51 minutes long, and when it hit the Tavari orbital stations, something inside their memory vaults triggered. Old logs, redacted, fragments. Audio files once thought erased. They began to surface. On the Tavari High Ship Sanctum Arc, Subadjudicator Venrek collapsed in the hallway. He wasn't wounded. He was crying. His neural regulator failed, overwhelmed by the broadcast frequencies. And inside his mind, he saw it. A memory not his own. A lullaby, sung by a Tavari, mother to a child before the purge. He didn't understand what it meant, only that it hurt, and that he didn't want it to stop. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had not just fought back. They had turned the invaders' most cherished, most forbidden memory into a global remix. Not to mock, but to mourn, and in doing so, they reawakened something ancient inside the VAARI. It was worse than any weapon, was empathy. Layla's second performance shattered orbital silence. Her new track, Harmony is Rebellion, dropped like thunder across Earth's skies. It was sent in layers. First, a slow heartbeat pulse, mimicking the biosignature of grief. Then, the alien's own words, slowed until they sounded like confession. Then came Earth's chorus, multilingual, multi-voiced, no lyrics, just unity. It echoed for 33 seconds in absolute silence. Then Vari ship number 872 went dark. Its crew disabled weapons. They didn't defect. They just stopped, laid down on the floor, and listened. The Tavari High Council called an emergency session. There was no panic in their words, only unease. Emotion was spreading, not from humans, but from within. The ones most exposed to human broadcasts were beginning to change. Disobey. Field. One counselor suggested quarantining Earth entirely. Another demanded full erasure. But one older, quieter simply asked, "What if the infection is what we lost?" Silence fell. They had thought emotion was weakness. But the virus in their systems didn't kill. It connected back on Earth. Zora collapsed from exhaustion in her bunker. Darius caught her before she hit the floor. The pulse beats of the latest track still echoed from the ceiling speakers. She opened her eyes and smiled faintly. "We didn't beat them." "No," Darius agreed. "We reminded them." She nodded. "Let's give them another chorus." The footage was supposed to be demoralizing. That was the point. Broadcast across over 5,000 alien systems and hijacked directly into Earth's emergency frequencies. The video was a masterclass in psychological warfare, a tower of crystal and gold. The Klizari High Channel beamed an image of Earth's delegation standing motionless as Supreme Harmonics VLAC screamed an alien speech into the void. His throat sacs vibrated like organ pipes, each word laced with disgust, superiority, and the unmistakable cadence of mockery. The translation overlay glowed on every screen. "You who cannot harmonize. You who weep at night. You whose language is nothing but jagged noise and childish plea. You will kneel not in reverence, but in shame. Your world is broken. Your culture, a joke. Your existence, a wrong note in the eternal melody of the cosmos. The laughter of thousands of alien species followed. Some clicked, some howled, some pulsed with rhythmic flashes of contempt. And across the earth, people saw it. Some screamed, some cried, some threw things at screens. But in a cluttered studio apartment in Manila, a music producer named Ilara watched with her jaw tight, earbuds still half hanging from her neck. She didn't scream. She hit record. Her fingers flew across her digital pad, isolating the frequencies in Voltac's speech. She wasn't a linguist. She didn't need to be. She knew pitch, tempo, tone. She layered the alien's rant over a slow-building synth beat, looping key syllables, chopping others, adding a drop that hit exactly when he called humanity a joke. She didn't plan to release it, but her friend Max did, and within 6 hours, the track titled Wrong Note Earth Mix had over 10 million downloads across Earth's black market meshnets. Within 12 hours, it reached Kleizari space, and 24 hours later, Voltac's own voice was blasting in alien clubs across 6 species worth of rebel subcultures. Now dubbed the Humiliation Anthem, what had been a speech of dominance had become a party song. The beat was too good to resist, and the humiliation, ironically, became mutual. The Council of Harmonious Subjugation was not amused. Inside the glistening halls of Safra 1, a temple city, orbiting a dying star, 11 species gathered to address what they called the human dissonance crisis. Monitors played the remix in the background, faint but present, as a background radiation of irreverence. Your Eminence, said Extol of the Urgrax hive, the humans have corrupted the intent of the broadcast. Their reaction was not demoralization. It was ... celebration. Voltac's jaw plates shuddered with fury. They twisted my sermon into entertainment, into amusement. It was a divine rebuke, reduced to bass drops. The hologram of a Crantal philosopher blinked its translucent eye. Perhaps that is the essence of their threat. They do not counter us with equal force. They absorb. They transform. They mock us, hissed Voltac. They disrespect the hierarchical melody of the known harmonics. They infect the song of order with discord. There was a pause. Then the Zern ambassador, a cloud of rotating sound particles, spoke in pulses. They are not discord. They are jazz. The chamber recoiled as if slapped. Back on Earth, Alara sat in a makeshift underground studio that used to be a subway tunnel. She was surrounded by people who didn't consider themselves warriors, dancers, sound engineers, beatboxers, symphony dropouts, and a 90-year-old blues guitarist who claimed to have jammed with ghosts. Their war wasn't fought with guns, it was fought with remixes. Kleizari propaganda was now fair game. Each new broadcast from the alien overlords intended to shame or demoralize became raw material. The Earth Underground Harmony Movement, or EUHM, formed with one goal: to hijack the enemy's voice and make it sing our pain, our joy, our anger, our defiance. Each time a new speech aired, a new track dropped hours later. One remix, Weep at Night, turned an alien condemnation of human dreams into a haunting lullaby that made even hardened resistance fighters cry. Another, Kneel in Shame, became an anthem for the guerrilla rebels in the Andes. With its chorus a rhythmic chant, we kneel for no one. We rise with sound. Even soldiers on the front lines reported their morale increased tenfold when the latest drops hit their radios. In some sectors, alien patrols began confiscating music devices. In others, the aliens tried flooding Earth networks with white noise. It didn't matter. We turned the static into percussion. We turned everything into rhythm in orbit. Aboard a Kleizari command cruiser, Subcommander Thurinkol reviewed transmission decay rates and internal morale feedback reports. He paused when he noticed a disturbing new trend. 3 of their junior officers had uploaded human remixes into their private listening cycles. One had even cross-modulated the rhythms into their dream loops. "It's viral," the AI assistant warned. "Viral. Mimetic contagion. Their use of syncopated emotion vectors embedded within sound has begun, triggering neural overstimulation in Klazari personnel. Side effects include dream instability, empathy spikes, and lowered obedience indexes." Theronkel snarled, "Shut it down." But even as he said it, another crewman across the deck tapped their console in rhythm to a beat only they could hear. The next evolution came from Berlin. A sound technician named Amina managed to infiltrate an alien broadcast relay tower. Instead of jamming the alien signal, she hijacked it, injecting a single melody over top of the next. Declaration of conquest that was subtle. Just 4 bars of a human folk song played behind Voltak's rant. The song, "You Are My Sunshine." At first, no one noticed. But by the second repeat, alien listeners grew agitated. Klazari officers began reporting emotional disturbances. Some couldn't complete sentences. Others wandered in circles, humming. The hybrid signal had done more than mock. It had stuck. Earth's resistance realized something massive. This wasn't just music anymore. This was infiltration. In a vault, buried beneath Antarctica, Dr. Koji Watanabe, a cognitive linguist and acoustic neuroscientist, pored over Klazari vocal architecture. "They harmonize in tritonic layers," he explained to Alara, over a secure channel. "Their very language is built on fixed frequency control. They evolved to suppress dissonance emotionally and biologically." "And we're hitting them with dissonance?" Alara asked. "No," he smiled. "We're hitting them with freedom. Their minds aren't built to interpret variums. Human music, especially remix culture, fluid, chaotic, improvisational. It scrambles their predictability matrices." Alara leaned back. "So we're not fighting noise with noise." "No," Koji said. "You're fighting oppression with jazz." The council grew desperate. They issued a decree. Any Klazari or allied species found consuming or replicating Earth-origin auditory materials would be subject to immediate memory sterilization. But the damage was done. Whispers of Earth's defiance spread. Alien youth began copying rhythms in secret. On trade moons, human music played under black market stalls. In the slave mines of HFY, a human captive beat a spoon against a pipe in 4/4 time and others followed. It wasn't rebellion yet, but it was rhythm, and rhythm never stays caged. In Los Angeles, the EUHM launched Project Reverb. Their plan was simple: hijack the largest alien broadcast of the year, the Declaration of Subjugation, delivered galaxy-wide by Voltak, and turn it into the greatest drop the universe had ever heard. Hackers worked overtime. Musicians stayed up for days. Dancers choreographed in blackout bunkers. And Alara sat alone in her studio, headphones on, sculpting the beat that would shatter a throne. When the day came, the Klazari signal burst across space like a trumpet of dominion, but halfway through the screen glitched, the melody changed, the beat hit, and suddenly, billions of beings heard something impossible. Not Veltak's command, but humanity's remix. The hook was his own voice, twisted into something beautiful and terrifying. "You will kneel, not in shame, ... but in groove, groove, groove." And then the drop hit. All across the galaxy, the silence broke. On Earth, in bunkers, in forests, on rooftops, people danced. On alien worlds, resistors danced. In cities, under occupation, children danced, not to forget, but to fight. They had tried to silence us. We answered with sound. They tried to shame us. We turned their words into rhythm, and now, the galaxy was singing along. The message was brief, hidden inside a routine weather transmission from the South Pacific Resistance Network. It wasn't encrypted with code or buried under layers of cybersecurity protocols. It was simpler than that. It was a melody, 12 notes, repeating in a progression that meant nothing to a computer, but everything to the human ear. Ilara recognized it instantly as the second chorus of Wrong Note, Earth Mix, the viral remix that had started it all. But this version was different. The key had changed, warped upward slightly, reshaped as if strained through another culture's ears. And tucked beneath it was a low-frequency pattern barely audible to most human instruments. But not to her, because that pattern didn't come from Earth. It came from inside the Klaisari Empire, half a world away. In the salt-ruined remains of Cairo, DJ Renzo slid his cracked headphones over his ears and focused on the beat. His base of operations was a gutted museum turned into a sound lab, where broken marble pedestals supported speaker arrays scavenged from old malls. His signal router was powered by a solar generator rigged from reflective glass shards. He listened out behind, the melody behind the bass and hooks and loops. There was something new, syncopation that didn't match human timing, a rhythm that felt like it was trying to understand how to feel, how to groove. Renzo's eyes widened. It's not a remix, he whispered into his mic. It's a reply. The Klaisari defector had no name, not one he would share. He had once been a monitor of sonic integrity and elite within the Klaisari caste system, trained to isolate and eradicate disharmonic signals before they infected the population. For centuries, he had hunted deviant frequencies, imprisoned subversive musicians, deleted cultural archives that contained emotional variants. Then, he heard the remix. He had tried to filter it, tried to remove the impurity, but the more he filtered, the more of himself disappeared. So instead of deleting the file, he listened to it again and again, until something cracked. It wasn't pain, it wasn't fear, it was rhythm, and rhythm became rebellion. He didn't defect. In a blaze of glory, he didn't steal a ship or blow up a relay. He simply changed one modulation file in a single satellite transmission path just enough to let a human song slip through the Klaisari firewall. That song spread, and with it, so did he. On Earth, Project Polyphony was born. Its goal was unprecedented: direct sonic communication with defectors through harmonic layering. Each human broadcast wasn't just a song now, it was a conversation, a test, a probe. Sound engineers rewrote entire tracks and tunings, designed not for human ears, but for bioacoustic receptors. They didn't need lyrics anymore. They needed tension, variation, pressure, modulation. What they created wasn't music in the traditional sense. It was resonance, diplomacy, and it was working. In abandoned cities and smuggled frequencies, Earth's DJs were receiving more than static. They were getting counter-rhythms, alien notes, attempts at duets, a call, and an answer. The Council of Harmonious Subjugation had no answer. Their warriors were experiencing breakdowns, not from weapons, but from the absence of rhythm when transmissions were cut. Some begged to hear the songs again. Others started humming them aloud. The Empire responded with acoustic purification camps, facilities, meant to cleanse infected personnel of Earth's influence. Inside, defectors were forced to listen to constant drone cycles, white noise, and silence. But it only made them crave the music more. It didn't matter that they didn't understand the words. They felt the meaning, and it was changing them. On the International Space Archive Station, orbiting what was left of Norway, Dr. Ryland Wong compiled the first known lexicon of cross-species harmonic intent. He cross-referenced thousands of transmissions and determined a pattern: human emotional tones. He said in a broadcast, are behaving like quantum particles. Observing them changes the observer. Listening to them doesn't just trigger thought, it rewrites instinct. He uploaded the data. The file went viral within resistance circles. It also triggered a mass lockdown in Klaisari communications centers. They knew, they were scared, because every soldier exposed to the transmissions risked becoming human. Not in biology, in spirit, in a desert outpost, on the ruins of Las Vegas. An open-air concert took place, not for humans, but for aliens. 20 Klazari defectors stood in the shadows, unarmed, watching a lone girl with a cracked guitar sing into a solar-powered amp. Her voice cracked, her hands trembled. The song was called Echoes of Nothing. It had no chorus, only a heartbeat. The Klazari watched in silence. Then, one of them reached up and clapped, just once. The others stared. Then, another clapped. Then 2 more. And slowly, their bodies swayed, not in discipline, not in control, but in feel. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were listeners, and that changed everything. Supreme Harmonics Galactic issued a decree. All rhythmic transmissions must be halted at origin. All Earth audio must be labeled as terrorism. All defectors are to be erased. Immediately. It was a futile command. The rhythm was out. The beat had dropped, and even in the most fortified command stations, the humming had begun. Not loud, not defiant, just soft, subtle, unstoppable. In Tokyo, Ilara and her team released their most ambitious project yet. Not a single remix, but a score, a full harmonic suite, structured in 3 movements. The fall, a dirge laced with recordings from Earth's darkest days, laid over the tonal signature of the first Klazari declaration. The fire, a fusion of warzone frequencies, rebel shouts, and the steady rhythm of resistance. The rise, a blend of Earth and Klazari tones, woven together in a melody not meant to conquer but to coexist. It aired on every channel. Earth still controlled, and then on one they didn't. Klazari Relay 7, long thought impenetrable, suddenly began echoing the final movement, the rise across 6 sectors that had pirated their own system. The virus had gone airborne. The next day, a Klazari scout ship landed outside Buenos Aires. The crew didn't attack. They didn't speak. They opened the hatch, held out an amplifier, and played a single song. It was wrong note, Earth mix. Only now, the voice wasn't VLT, a KK single quotes, is that it was theirs. In harmony, asterisk. They called it the Echo War, though hardly a shot was fired. It didn't start with armies. It didn't end with treaties. And yet, across 1,000 light-years of tangled conflict, the war had bent every assumption of what power looked like and who wielded it. On the surface of Earth, there were no victory parades, no grand banners, only quiet, a collective exhale, like a held breath, finally released. And at the center of it all was a song, not the original remix that had sparked the Galactic uprising. Not even the rise, which had played in unison, from Earth and alien satellites alike, no. The final signal transmitted from Pulse Node 0, the oldest satellite array still functioning, wasn't a remix, or a defiance, or a weapon. It was a lullaby. A mother's voice, old and imperfect, singing to a child who would never wake again. The recording was from before the invasion, scratched into the memory chip of a solar recorder buried in rubble for 3 years. Ilara found it, and she made sure the galaxy heard. Weeks before, the turning point hadn't seemed so certain, though Klazari forces were beginning to fragment, some refusing orders, others going rogue. A desperate fraction of the alien command, known as the Monotone Ring, had formed a contingency plan, an auditory suppression grid designed to drown out all Earth origin audio in a 200 light-year radius. They called it Project Silence, and it was terrifyingly close to completion. If deployed, it would erase the only weapon humanity had left. Its voice, so the resistance made a decision not to fight it, to overload it, in a converted data fortress beneath the Himalayas. The resistance orchestrated what became known as the Great Feedback. They gathered everything. Hundreds of thousands of audio files, children laughing, lovers whispering, soldiers screaming, grandmothers praying, poets reciting, songs sung in pain, speeches made in rage. Confessions whispered in bunkers. Weddings performed under sirens. Babies crying. They compressed the entirety of human emotion into a synchronized frequency ladder, designed not to destroy, but to saturate. And when Kleiseri relay stations across 6 sectors fired up their suppression array, they found their signal already compromised. The silence they tried to impose sang back supreme harmonics. Voltac was never found. Official records say his cruiser imploded near the gravity well of Docker 9. Others say he succumbed to the rhythm, locked himself in a private chamber, looping Earth transmissions until his mind fractured. What's certain is this: the Kleiseri command collapsed from within. One by one, their ships ceased fire. Their patrols stopped chasing. Their drone mines powered down. It wasn't surrender, it was resonance. They couldn't block it anymore, so they listened. The galactic community, long silent on the human crisis, began to emerge. The silver whose crystalline minds had long filtered emotion as static, sent emissaries to Earth bearing reflective data notes, copies of their cultural records, asking humans to interpret their own forgotten past. The Thalan Hive, once dismissive of organic memory, opened a corridor of communication, requesting emotional consultants to help understand what had infected their soldiers, some of whom now wept at songs and carved memorials into ship walls. Even species who had mocked Earth joined what would later be called the Concord of Memory, not because they agreed, but because they felt. On Earth, Alara stood in the ruins of Radio Tokyo. The tower had fallen. Its dishes lay cracked and broken, cables like vines across stone, and yet one terminal still blinked. She sat down, plugged in a cracked mic, and closed her eyes. "This is Alara," she said softly. "From the city you silenced. From the people you tried to erase." She paused. "I'm not here to fight." She hit play, and the lullaby began from space. The effect was immediate. The last of the suppression towers began to short, not from overload, not from sabotage, from feedback. They weren't built to handle sorrow, or love, or the soft, trembling ache of a human voice singing to the dark. Some systems simply gave up. And as the towers shut down, across alien world screens flickered, audio feeds buzzed, and then music played. It wasn't in their languages, but every being who heard it understood. On the orbiting station Horizon Bridge, now converted from a Kleiseri warship into a neutral diplomacy platform, a conference was held. Not one of borders, one of stories. Ambassadors brought memories instead of demands. Humans led workshops on grief processing. Kleiseri defectors recited poetry, halting, imperfect, but real. One delegation brought a remix, a combination of human lullabies and traditional Kleiseri frequency chants. It wasn't beautiful, but it was true, and that mattered more. General Rios, one of the last surviving original Earth defense commanders, sat at a bonfire in the ruins of what was once Chicago. He didn't speak, he just listened. A child across from him played a harmonica, off-key, missing notes but trying. Beside the child sat a Kleiseri, humming in a low, trembled frequency. They were in harmony, not perfectly, but enough. History would mark the wars. End, not by a treaty, but by a transmission. The memory beacon, launched from the moonbase Cassandra, carried a single message into the galaxy. Not a threat, not a warning, a song. A recording of Earth's first musical transmission to the stars, a copy of an old blues track. Raw and crackling, voice strained with longing. Below it, the inscription, in Galactic Common, "You laughed at our weakness, but we made it sing." The galaxy changed, not overnight, not easily. Some species resisted the wave of emotion, some feared it, but they couldn't unhear it. And those who embraced it, those who let the rhythm in, found something they hadn't realized they'd lost. Not technology, not order, but meaning. Years later, in a classroom on a rebuilt Mars colony, a teacher asked a group of hybrid children, What they remembered about the war. A boy with violet eyes and a Klizari resonance implant raised his hand. My mom says we didn't win with lasers, he said. The teacher smiled. Then how? We won with music. The teacher nodded. And what's music to you? The boy thought for a moment. Then, it's when your soul makes a sound. The class was silent. Then someone hummed. Then two more joined. Then the whole room began to sing. A patchwork of tunes. Joyful, sad, strange, wild dot, off dash beat, off dash key, but together.